Reddit, what's your high school's tragedy? A kid that had a shitty home life used to get picked on every day at school. He finally made one true friend when he got to high school. Things really started looking up for him when they went on their first double date. During what might have been the first truly happy night of his life, the driver lost control of the car and this kid wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He got a bunch of write-ups misremembering him as a popular athlete. Louis Nava. I was only in 9th grade at the time. I think he was in 10th or 11th, but the dude was a stellar wrestler and all around very nice guy. He would help the newer kids, like myself, in practice and give us tips on how to get better. Good looking, friendly, you know, the typical star athlete that everyone loved. One night he was at Aristeta getting some groceries and was carjacked with his friend. They drove them both in their car about 5 counties away, told them to get out, put their shirts on their heads, and told them to run into the woods. As they did, they were shot. The friend managed to get away. I think he was wounded, but Louis was shot in the head. God, it's been years. This happened in the late 90s, but I can remember the dude like it was yesterday. Was a very sad time for our school. In 7th grade, a girl was murdered. I sat by her in history class. She was really nice, but always a bit quiet. She slept a lot. The teacher would always come wake her up. There was a span of a week where she didn't show up to school, and there were a couple rumors about what happened. Our English teacher broke down and told us that she's been abused by her mother and stepfather and the pair had murdered her. I'm not sure the extent of the abuse. I remember my mother mentioning that the stepfather dragged happy. Jesus fucking Christ, you guys are all obnoxious grandma Nazis. Her around the house by her hair, but it was surreal that someone who sat next to me in class and let me borrow a pencil every now and again was gone. 2 girls, one who had attended my primary school, drowned on a school trip, and the teacher who was injured trying to save them was blamed for it by the press, and went into depression for years. He was back teaching by the time I went up to secondary school, and it broke my heart to see the things they said about him, and how badly it messed him up at the time, because he's the loveliest, kindest old man I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. Also, some guy got electrocuted and died while snicking copper wire from the train station, but he'd been excluded for threatening someone with a knife at that point. *GUIS. I was like 4 at the time it happened. There wasn't a lot I could have done to stop them slandering him. We had a teacher that for some reason everyone took a dislike to. He wasn't that bad or strict, but for some reason everyone hated him. I was in class once, and we locked him in his equipment cupboard. Stuff like that regularly happened to him. He never really used to say anything, just kinda got on with it. Anyway, he spilled from his wife, and lost his DL for drink driving. He ended up having to get the bus in the morning with everyone traveling to school. As always, everyone was really cruel to him. Halfway through year 9 he committed suicide. The worst thing about was that everyone found it really funny. Adult me is feeling very ashamed of teenage me right now. So a bunch of posts of dead students. I could contribute to that, but I'm going to choose the path of 2 male teachers who systemically preyed upon and sexually abused boys in our boarding school over a period of decades. The school and church covered it up for years. When it finally came to light in public forum, one teacher shot himself, the other defiantly denied everything until his death sometime later, still protected by the church who paid out a few million in hush money. No wrongdoing was ever admitted. A friend of mine was getting off a bus in front of her twin brother. She remarked to me that she just wanted to help people in the future as her job, a nurse or a doctor or something. Then a car swerved to avoid a fender bender, mounted the curb, struck her and she died on scene. I was her locker partner. I had to give everything to her parents and brother. We had this one teacher. She was a quest teacher. It was a health class basically. She talked about sex ed stuff and the dangers of smoking, that sort of thing. We got to sit on couches in a big circle, rather than desks in rows. She had breast cancer, and it was pretty bad. She was bald from the chemo, and had a port installed on her chest, so they could just inject into that, since they had already destroyed all the veins on her arms or whatnot. Despite all this hardship, she was one of the warmest, sweetest, most cheerful, most loving people I have ever met. I'll always remember one particular thing that she said. She talked about going to a friend's funeral recently. The friend had died an agonizing and slow death from cancer. My teacher wore a brightly colored floral patterned dress, while everyone else was wearing black. She did this because she was not mourning, she was celebrating the end of her friend's suffering. She had accepted death and made peace with it and knew that it was just the natural course of life. She died a year later, and the whole school was devastated. I made sure to wear bright colors. A good friend of mine's older sister killed herself. I went to high school on a college campus, and she had just graduated high school, but was continuing there for college. In our second semester, she intentionally overdosed on pills, and no one really knows why. Most of the school was devastated. She was attractive, popular, intelligent, and was friends with just about everyone. The school was only about 250 people. She always seemed so cheerful. I still wonder to this day what went wrong. A girl named Joy was insanely happy and nice and popular, had an aneurysm and died. She was uncharacteristically mean that day and told everyone she had a headache. It happened in the hallway and she just kinda slumped against the lockers. We found her when classes let out. One kid said Joy's here in the hall. A huge jock dude picked her up and took her to the nurse and someone called 911. She had been dead for some time by then. Saddest thing I ever saw. She was the sweetest person. Ate lunch with the special kids a few times a month. She was a sophomore and insanely popular. She was really tiny, and one time at a dance a weird rap mosh pit formed. Joy got to crowd surf. She really resembled a tiny, fairy-like girl. Our whole school mourned her for months. There was a huge race-based fight that had been going on and the senior boys rounded up a Chinese boys and beat him till he died. Beforehand there were a lot of fights leading up to that, so I don't really think it matters who did what. Just a lot of anger and hate fueling something that shouldn't have come in between all of us. It was scary. They issued a warning saying, if they see any Chinese around after school they would gut them. I remember waiting in class until I was sure my mom came and got me. When I was a freshman, there was a weather-related car accident that killed 4 seniors from the year before I got there. There were memorials at school and constant reminders about driving appropriately for conditions. It was a big deal my freshman and sophomore year, but by junior year was fading, and by senior year was mostly forgotten and a thing of the past. Theirs was a sophomore, I think, named Jonathan who went swimming clothed, which eventually weighed him down, and he was stuck underwater for too long and drowned. Emergency came and got him out, but he stayed in a coma until he eventually passed away months later. Never knew him, only saw him passing by in the hallway, but it was very surreal having that happen in my school. There was also a teacher from my elementary school who died during my sophomore year when he was struck by a car crossing the street. In my final year of high school, there was a shitstorm regarding personal information that was accessed by half the grade using a teacher's login details. We had the password for years and used it to check marks and ranks of schoolwork and all was good. In the final weeks of HS, some idiot decides to change his English mark, moving himself from 33rd to 3rd. The school obviously finds out and everyone who was involved gets in trouble. The kid that changed his marks obviously got expelled, while the other half of the grade all got punished by not being permitted to attend the school formal and graduation. Next thing I know, everyone's starting a huge protest and some awesome shit gets involved and revoke the punishments because parents were threatening to get lawyers or something. Considering the teacher gave out the password willingly to another student and the school refused to admit the teacher's mistake, aggressively trying to blame the students for hacking when that simply wasn't the case. Pretty stupid if you ask me. Shying away from a death post. Catholic high school. 2 of our favorite teachers who had actually made their classes engaging and opened up their classrooms to anybody needing a hand in school and in life, both divorced before they had started teaching there. They decided to move in together after dating for 2 years and were planning on getting married the next year. They kept it all quiet out of pure professionalism. Administration found out somehow and fired both of them, I believe for breaking the school's code of conduct for teachers by cohabitating before marriage. We lost 2 of the best teachers in our school that helped out and inspired their students in every way they could try to. We had a little girl in the 6th grade whose heart gave out in the bathroom. I was in 8th grade in gym class. What kinda pissed me off was that I was in gym and our gym teacher was the guy who had to respond to code blues. I always thought the guy was kind of an ass, but anyway he just seemed careless when they called for him. I remember he was like, "Oh man," walks out slowly and whistling, and then a minute later he comes back and says, "Forgot my keys," and then walks off again twirling the keys, still whistling and not really rushing. I'm not sure if he went any faster that it would have even made a difference because the girl's heart just gave out, but he could have at least put more effort into it. During a cross-country competition at my old high school, one girl was chased around the school and raped multiple times in multiple bathrooms by a group of boys. The doors to the school remained unlocked for some reason, though there were no staff actually in the building. Her parents tried suing for it, but the school brushes it under the rug. To my knowledge, nothing ever became of the situation, even though there was camera footage of them chasing her and following her into bathrooms and such. There's like this curse at my high school where every year the graduating class after prom, or after the school year ends, someone from that class dies. It's been going on for about 6 years now. I was class of 2012, the class before me, 2011, there was this kid who would pick on me at times. I remember after lunch waiting by the center tree waiting for my friends to come meet with me so we can head to class together. He came up to snatched my biology book out of my hand and threw it up a tree. I was late to class because I had to wait for the vice principal to come with a ladder to get it down. Anyways, he was class of 2011. He went to a party with friends and was hanging outside in front of the house when a car slowly drove by him and his friends and proceed to start shooting at them. He was shot in the head and was dead at the scene. When I heard about that, I didn't know what to feel. All I put on his literal memorial was RIP. I'm a little late posting, but this is something personal to me. When I was a junior, I was dating a beautiful blonde and smart girl a grade under myself. Her name was Shannon. We had recently broke up due to her having confided her affections with someone else. High school relationships can be gruesome and fleeting, but I was relatively calm about all of this and still try to remain friends with her. We talked for a few months here and there, but I refused to reinitiate another relationship with her. Also note that I was living on my own with my older brother at the time, so people regularly came to my place late or would use my apartment as a hangout as it was extremely close to the school. One night, she came by my place around 11 p. She did not look upset or sad that I can remember, but she was carrying a loaded .38. Her mother was a police officer, so it didn't surprise me, and she was known to have a fascination with weapons. She asked to stay at my place, and I told her that she was not welcome. At the time, I knew she had fits of suicidal tendencies in the past, but being the young idiot I was, I paid no attention to this obvious cry for help. She left after I asked her to leave, and the very next day she was found dead in her car off a side road a few miles away. She had shot herself in the head. I was the last person to see her. It tore me up for a long time, and occasionally when I really think about it, it bothers me even more as I've matured. I could have done something, but chose not to. I rarely, if ever, talk about it. Thanks for listening, guys.